Your heart was the safest place on earth, and I am so grateful to have experienced it. The way you loved me as a sister is part of what made me who I am today. Because you lived, I am a better person.
You just lost your loved one. Now what? Welcome to the Grief in Life podcast, where we explore this new reality through grief-colored lenses. Openly, authentically, I'm your host, Nina Rodriguez. Let's get started.
Hi, friends. Welcome back. You might see that today we are doing things a little bit differently. If you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing that my background's a little different. I am talking to you today from the comfort of my couch. So think of this episode as a comfy conversation. We're just hanging out. As of the moment that I'm recording this, it's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. And just come hang out with me on my couch and let's check in with each other. So first, how is your heart? How are you feeling today? Check in with yourself. Take a deep breath. I'll take one with you. Release what no longer serves you in this moment, and I hope you are doing well. So 50th episode. This is surreal for me because when I started this podcast, it just was one of those things where I wasn't sure where the path was going to lead. I was literally following one foot in front of the other. And as I took steps, the path lit up, if you will. And here we are for the 50th episode, about a week after my brother's 5th anniversary. So the 5th anniversary of his passing. And I feel like using this time and this space to commemorate those 5 years and talk to you about how it was that 5th anniversary, that for whatever reason, it felt so huge. It felt so important. It felt so, it just loomed over as we approached. The date was just kind of looming. So I wanted to talk about the patterns that I notice as we near grief anniversaries. And then you tell me if you've experienced something like that. And I also want to read the speech that I gave during his memorial 5 years ago. I've mentioned how he passed. I've mentioned glimpses of him here and there, but in the speech, I captured part of the essence of who he was, and I do want to share that. And more importantly, the ripple effect of what he taught me and everything that's happened since. First, I'll talk about the anniversary. Each year, my family and I have intuitively created these rituals. The first year, I remember we got invited to an angel walk for a person here in Florida whose son unfortunately passed some years ago. And every year he was doing these beautiful angel walks, which was like about a 5K where grievers get to walk in this beautiful outdoor park. And along the way, there are these signs with pictures of each family's loved one. And it's just a beautiful meditation and gathering. Unfortunately, because of COVID, I believe they stopped doing that shortly thereafter, but it just got us in this habit of creating something special each September. And we try to incorporate elements of joy and then honor our grief as well, right? Because it's the joy of his life. And also we miss him. We just, at the end of the day, we miss him so much. And when we first started our grief journey, I remember putting these arbitrary timelines and these milestones as a way to collect data. That's what I call it. Collecting data that we would be able to survive this. We would be able to do life after the loss of my brother, which if you heard my episodes, it was just mom, dad, brother, and I. So the loss was felt so much because there's few of us. In those times, it was just, and I survived this next hour. The timeline was very short. Then the next week, then our day, then week, then month, then year. And as the years went by, my big milestone was the 5-year mark. It was like, dun, dun, dun. If we could make it to the 5-year mark, like we did it, right? Unfortunately, something that caught me really off guard was that when we got to the 5-year mark, the day after, I was like, now what? I had not thought past the 5-year mark. And because of that, I started having flashbacks and nightmares, and the anxiety and all of these feelings came flooding back in. And it was like the physical symptoms and the anxiety and all this nervous energy that was very similar to what I felt the first year. And that really caught me off guard because I said, what the heck is happening? I've done so much work. I've learned so much about this. I help grievers. Like, what is happening? Then it dawned on me that because I had mentally established the 5-year mark as this milestone, anytime I felt like things were harder, that they were heavier, I always had this goal in the horizon. But once you accomplish a goal, you need another goal. And I was just focusing on this one and I didn't think past it. So that's I guess, a cautionary tale for anybody operating in a similar way. Just be sure to keep giving yourself other goals to reach because, gosh, it was so disorienting, or at least prepare to be a little disoriented once you achieve that goal, if you will. It feels weird calling it a goal, but I think you know what I mean. So I was going to actually record this episode on the 5th anniversary, but I was processing the grief and processing the reality of, my gosh, we're here. This is the 5-year, like, this is insane. Time feels so warped, all the things, and just processing all the emotions, allowing them to be, being with my family, all the things, that I decided to just digest what I was feeling and record when I was ready. So here we are. And so another thing that happened is the 5-year felt so big. Every year I make a video for him. So we have all these video footage from when we were kids and photos and all the things. And so I make a video every single year in memory of my brother, just to have something to play on his birthday and then on his anniversary. So my dad cooks his favorite meal on his birthday. And then the day after, we tend to go to a mass and then we watch the video with the family. So we have our relatives come over, talk about memories of my brother, and each year we did something different. So one year we did t-shirts, then we had these bracelets with phrases that reminded us of my brother. I've posted some of these on Instagram, so if anybody's seen it on my page, you know what I'm talking about. We'll do certain activities. We'll just do something to commemorate our love for him and the fact that we're grateful for his life and that we miss him every day. And in a way, he's with us every day because we keep his name alive. We talk about him all the time. But the 5th year felt so big, like I have to do something so huge. And ironically, what ended up happening is as we neared the date and as the weeks went by, it was this anticipatory grief. It just felt like this big buildup, like this date was looming over us. I was very overwhelmed. It came down to like less than a week and we still didn't have a plan as to what we were going to do this year. And it almost felt like we were letting him down. And I was talking to my mom and I was like, what are we going to do this year? Like, we haven't really planned anything. It dawned on me something that I tell the people that I work with one-on-one, and that is honor how you're feeling in the moment. At the end of the day, you do remember him and you do love him. And you also have to honor how you're feeling. If it feels forced to do something, if it feels overwhelming to do something in that moment, don't put that pressure on yourself. The anniversary and facing that reality once a year on these key dates is overwhelming enough. You don't have to add to that stress. So I told my mom, listen, we honor him every single day. We talk about him. We love him. So maybe we don't need to put this huge pressure on ourselves to do this grandiose thing for his 5-year anniversary, right? Maybe we just do something that is in his honor and that's enough, even if it's just us being together, right? So I did the video as usual. That actually came out beautiful. And, you know, that's always a nice thing because it feels like I'm spending time with him just by looking at the pictures and going through the footage. My mom and I do it together. So it's a lot of remember that and remember this and tears, sad tears, happy tears, funny tears, like all the things. That's always a good feeling for us. It takes an emotional toll, but at the same time, it's very refreshing and it quite literally feels like we just spent time with him. And it also brings back memories that you forget about with time. It's not that you forget about them. It just takes a little bit more time to retrieve the file, if you will. So then we cooked his favorite meal, my dad did. And I suddenly remembered that the first anniversary, a dear friend of mine gifted us this candle, this custom-made candle with a label that said Joseph's Light. And I remember that was so beautiful. And that's part of the reason why the podcast is called Grief and Light. The elements of light had so much to do with how we move forward and how we honor my brother that it felt very special. And I said, you know what? Let's bring it back to basics. I think it would be really cool if we get a custom-made candle that says Joseph's Light and give it to everybody so we can remember him like we did in the beginning. And then I had another idea and I said, aren't there places where you can make your own candles like together? And so I looked one up nearby, and sure enough, we made an appointment. It's interesting because it was like 9/11 at 11 in the morning. And I'm sure the person working there was like, what the heck is going on with these people? But it doesn't matter. We had a great time. We made a candle for him. We made a candle for ourselves. And the experience of doing this together in his name was actually really nice. And now we have the scented candle. So for my brother, I chose, I think it was the pumpkin pie scent, because I figured I always get the holiday candles, and we're going into holiday season. We're going into October, November. He loves pumpkin pie, so it just felt fitting. It just felt right. And I think that was a really nice way to mark the 5-year. It wasn't grandiose, it wasn't big, but it was meaningful. And I think that's all it needs to be at the end of the day, something that means something to you. And it could be something you do together out loud or very private. It could even be writing to him in a journal. So we did that, and it was really fun. Then we went to my grandparents' house, which is actually the place where my brother passed. And those 3 days that we were there, a pair of cardinals showed up. I posted it on my Instagram if you saw it. They were there. It looked like they were looking to find a place to nest. They were scouting places. And the timing just never ceases to amaze me. It just brought so much joy, because it just feels like those little moments of connection with the unseen, but it's so felt. And the timing was uncanny. The element of joy that they brought was amazing. And actually, the few months after my brother passed, there was a pair of cardinals that nested in the backyard of my grandparents' house, which is the house where all of our family and friends always gather. And they nested there for months. They even had little babies, and it became a thing, a very strong connection with my brother. So to see it at the 5-year anniversary, we hadn't seen them in a few years, was really, really nice. And so overall, I think it was a beautiful way to honor him. So if you're facing an anniversary, if you are trying to think of what to do, I suggest just going for something meaningful, something that fills your heart, but don't force it. Whatever you do, don't force it. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves, and it's already hard enough, right? And another thing that I noticed was the pattern of how I feel. And tell me if you feel this way. So the anticipatory grief of the days and weeks leading up to the big date sometimes feels harder than the date itself. I don't know if that's happened to you, but I find that the date itself is almost a relief, like, ooh, we got here. It's sad. It's horrible. We're faced with the reality. There's a bit of shock, but the angst, the buildup, sometimes is so much stronger than the day of. However, the day after, probably like 1 to 3 days after, it just feels sometimes even stronger again. So it's this weird peak, valley, peak of emotions. And this peak, valley, peak of emotions has been a pattern since day one, now that I think about it. So now I anticipate the anticipatory aspect of it, the lull in the middle, and then the grief hangover. So it doesn't catch me as off guard as it did in the beginning. And I'm curious if that's the way that you've experienced it as well. If you're able to comment on this episode wherever you're watching or listening, let me know there. And if not, let me know on Instagram at Grief and Light. I would love to hear from you. So now I would like to talk to you about the speech that I gave during his memorial. This was in 2019. I still have it in the notes section on my phone, so I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. And let me know what resonates. I feel like there is something in there that is obviously specific to my brother. You get to know a little bit about who he was and our relationship, but also let me know what you think. You'll understand when you hear it. So I wrote this September 18th, 2019 at 4:01 p.m. And it's called Ripples. About 2 weeks before your transition to the spirit world, you told us about a deep epiphany you had. You were staring at a pond in one of your favorite outdoor hangouts and decided to throw a rock in it, creating ripples across the surface of the water. When you told me about it, you said, I realize that we're like the ripples in the water. One wave in the ripple affects the next wave and the next wave and the next. So everything we do and who we are is always affecting people and life around us. Our ripple crashes into the next and becomes part of the next. We are all part of the same source. I love that you share that with me because I always loved your deep thoughts, but more importantly, because I realized that moment had a ripple effect in your own soul and in your being, as if you had found a missing piece in your life's puzzle. Your life, and now your transition, have sent ripples through all of ours. You craved a simpler world. You were always interested in the deep conversations and philosophies about our existence. You had a beautiful way of connecting with different expressions of life, particularly nature and animals. I called you the animal whisperer because you seemed to communicate with even the scariest of them, and I felt safe around you. Your mind was brilliant. Everyone lucky enough to have a meaningful conversation with you was in awe of how much you knew about different subjects, from Arduino to airplanes to quantum physics to animal behavior, philosophy, electronics, bike riding, cooking, and comedy. You were so smart, wise, curious, and funny. And you were so funny. You were so emotionally intelligent too. Some may have confused your kindness with weakness in the superficial world, but I saw how many times you were the bigger person in situations most people would not be able to handle. You were always humble enough to accept when you were wrong and when to ask for forgiveness, and you always made sure that you asked for forgiveness. You were so loving, and I will miss that the most. Your heart was the purest heart I knew. It loved unconditionally. You loved reminiscing on childhood memories with me, and I loved reliving them with you. You gave the best bear hugs, so full of love. They were the best bear hugs. Your eyes communicated so much godly love. Your soul is beautiful and pure, and we always felt that. Your heart was the safest place on earth, and I am so grateful to have experienced it. The way you loved me as a sister is part of what made me who I am today. You built me up when I was weak. You accepted me simply for who I am. The way you looked up to me made me believe in myself. Because you lived, I am a better person. You were always my big why when I took on a challenge. It pushed me to meet my goals. You always made me smile in times of pain. You always made me laugh so much. You kept me humble and focused on what's really important in life. You made me appreciate the simple things and never settle for anyone who treated me less than. You taught me to see the humanity in people who are outcast by society. You taught me that the most beautiful and evolved souls don't always lead traditional lives. You overcame so much adversity. You always managed to get back up when life pushed you down. I don't know how you did it, but I am so grateful that I always told you how proud I was of you and how much I loved you. I always meant it. You will always be my hero. Joseph, thank you. Thank you for choosing me as your sister and us as your family. You were a blessing who challenged everything we understood to be important. You taught us that it's not about what people think. You taught us how to remain united as a family through difficult times and how to appreciate the power of a good laugh. You taught us how to care for the vulnerable and those who do not have a voice. You taught me to have faith and hope, and more importantly, that this is not the end. Joseph, hermano de mi alma, I miss you, and I will always miss you so, so dearly. There is a void that no one will be able to fill, and I am grateful for that, because it will always remind me of how important you are. Thank you for loving Mom the way you did. Thank you for seeing Dad for who he is. Thank you for loving our grandparents, your cousins, your uncles, aunts, strangers, and animals. I will take on your loving legacy to impact the world as best as I can in your name. I will not judge people who I don't know just because they don't fit the stereotype of success. I will value what's essential in life. I will appreciate a good comedy and listen to blues music when I want to feel close to you. I will stare at the night sky in awe of our existence. I will always tell those I love that I love them. I will focus on what's meaningful over what's popular, and I will honor you by being the best I can be. I will remember your beautiful smile, your kind eyes, your bear hugs, our inside jokes, your sense of humor, your contagious laugh, and your I love you, sis. Your life on earth has sent ripple through all of ours, and I cannot wait to see you again on the other side. In the meantime, I'll remember that aha moment you had about 2 weeks ago and hold on tight to the notion that we are all essentially part of the same source, and as such, we remain connected forever. I love you, brother. Thank you for everything. I am so proud of you. Go where you need to be now, and if you ever want to talk, I'll always listen.
That's it for today's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Grief and Light podcast. I'd also love to connect with you and hear your thoughts and your stories. Feel free to share them with me via my Instagram page at Grief and Light, or you can also visit griefandlight.com for more information and updates. Thank you so much for being here, for being you, and always remember, you are not alone.